an underblock by Duncan.
How did you feel about that?
A fabulous alley-oop.
NBA champions.
He's my GOAT. That is the kind of phrase you expect a basketball legend to throw around. But when Tim Duncan finally named 7 of his absolute favorite players of all time, something felt off. The list did not look the way people imagined it would. There were no picks built around the flashiest names in the game. There were no choices made just to please a crowd. Instead, the list was quiet. It was thoughtful. And it pointed to something far deeper than scoring titles or highlight reels. Tim Duncan is widely considered the greatest power forward in basketball history. For 19 long seasons, he played for one team, and one team only, the San Antonio Spurs. He won 5 championships. He helped build a dynasty that changed the way teams think about culture and winning. Yet through all of it, he stayed calm, humble, and almost invisible off the court. He did not chase fame. He did not throw out hot takes. He rarely gave public rankings of other players during his playing days. So when a man like that finally opens up and names his favorites, you have to pay attention, because his choices are not random. They are a window into how he sees the game. They reveal what he truly believes makes a player great. If you're enjoying this breakdown already, make sure to hit the hype feature and give this video some hype as we uncover what Tim Duncan's choices really reveal. Trust me, the deeper we go, the more these 7 names start to make sense. Here's the big question we are going to answer today. What do these 7 players reveal about how Tim Duncan viewed greatness? Because once you understand his picks, you understand the mind of one of the smartest players who ever lived, and that mind is far more interesting than any list of names could ever be on its own. Most fans would expect a legend to fill his list with the biggest scorers and the most exciting dunkers. That is what sells. That is what fills highlight reels. But Duncan never cared about any of that. His 7 picks are a mix of historical giants, childhood idols, modern masters, and the teammates who stood beside him through it all. Each one was chosen for a reason, and by the time we reach the end, you will see that not a single name on this list is there by accident. Every choice is a clue. Every choice points back to the same quiet set of beliefs that guided his entire career. Let us start with who Tim Duncan really was. People called him the big fundamental. The name fit him perfectly. He did not rely on tricks. He did not need flash. He just did the simple things better than anyone else, over and over, for almost 20 years. He won 5 championships with the Spurs. He played all 19 of his seasons with the same franchise, in a sport where stars often move from team to team chasing rings and money. Duncan stayed loyal to one home. What made him stand out even more was how little he cared about being famous. Many superstars love the spotlight. They build their brands. They argue about who is the best. They give interviews full of bold opinions. Duncan did almost none of that. He rarely made public player rankings. He did not run big media campaigns built around himself. He let his game do the talking, and his game spoke louder than words ever could. This is exactly why his opinions carry so much weight. When a loud player names his favorites, you wonder if he is just chasing attention. But when a quiet man like Duncan finally speaks, you know he means it. He is not performing. He is not trying to go viral. He is simply telling you what he truly admires. And that honesty is rare. You also have to remember just how much he accomplished while staying so quiet. 5 championships is a mountain that very few players ever climb. 19 seasons with a single team is almost unheard of in the modern game. He helped pile up well over 1,000 regular season wins for the Spurs. He took an entire franchise and turned it into a model of how to win the right way. And he did all of it, without ever needing to tell you how great he was. The trophies spoke, the wins spoke. The respect of his peers spoke. He never had to. At 49 years old, Duncan finally gave us that window. He named 7 players he considers his absolute favorites. The group is a mix. There are historical giants. There are childhood idols. There are modern masters. And there are teammates who defined his career. At first, it might look like a strange collection, but once you look closer, you start to see a pattern. Every single pick reflects the same set of values: elite skill, relentless effort, emotional control, and a deep belief in the team over the individual. To understand why Duncan thinks this way, we have to go back to the very beginning, because his story does not start on a basketball court at all. It starts in the water. Before he was a basketball legend, Tim Duncan was a swimmer. And not just any swimmer. He was one of the best young swimmers in the United States Virgin Islands. His path looked set. He was built for the pool, not the hardwood. But life had other plans. A powerful hurricane swept through and destroyed his local training facilities. Suddenly, the place where he trained was gone. That single event changed everything. With swimming taken away from him, Duncan turned to a different sport. He picked up a basketball, and slowly that new sport became his future. It is a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest turns in life come from things we never planned. Duncan did not choose basketball at first. Basketball found him after his first dream was washed away. From there, his journey led him to Wake Forest. And this is where the second part of his character really took shape. Most top prospects today rush through college. They play one season, or even skip college entirely, and jump straight to the pros to chase money. Duncan did the opposite. By the end of his second year, he was already projected as the clear first overall pick. He could have left right then and become rich, almost anyone would have. But Duncan stayed. He stayed all 4 years. He did it to keep a promise to his late mother. He had promised her that he would graduate, and no amount of fame or money was going to break that promise, so he finished school. He earned his degree, and only then did he move on to the next chapter. Think about what that choice tells you. It tells you about discipline. It tells you about patience. It tells you about a young man who thought about the long term instead of the quick reward. He was willing to wait. He was willing to keep his word. He was willing to grow fully before stepping into the spotlight. These are not just nice habits. These are the exact values that would later shape who he admired most. There is also a hidden gift in that decision. By staying 4 full years, Duncan did not enter the league as a raw, unfinished talent. He entered as a complete player. He had time to learn. He had time to mature. He had time to sharpen every part of his game before the bright lights ever found him. Many young stars arrive full of talent but short on polish. Duncan arrived as a finished product. He was disciplined, fully formed, and ready to win from his very first day. That patience gave him an edge that lasted his entire career. When Duncan finally entered the professional ranks in 1997, he walked into a wild world. The league at that time was full of bold, expressive individual stars. Players like Allen Iverson, Kevin Garnett, Latrell Sprewell, and Stephon Marbury brought huge personalities to the court. The whole era was loud and full of attitude. On top of that, the game was dominated by the massive physical force of Shaquille O'Neal. Into all of this stepped Tim Duncan, calm, quiet, disciplined. He was almost the complete opposite of everything around him. Some people described him like a classical clarinetist walking into a circle of modern rap artists. He just did not fit the mood of the moment, and yet that difference became his greatest strength. San Antonio welcomed his disciplined approach with open arms. Under the coaching of Greg Popovich, Duncan became the perfect centerpiece of an unusual franchise. The Spurs did not want loud. They wanted steady, they wanted smart, they wanted team first. And Duncan was the living example of all of it. The system and the player matched perfectly. That match would go on to build one of the greatest dynasties the game has ever seen. Now that we understand who Duncan was, let us finally dig into his 7 favorite players. And the first one takes us all the way back to his childhood. The first name on the list is Magic Johnson. When Tim Duncan first fell in love with basketball, Magic was his favorite player. And that is a fascinating detail because of what Duncan wanted to be back then. When he first picked up the sport, he did not dream of being a giant in the paint. He wanted to play point guard. He wanted to be the one running the show, setting up teammates, controlling the flow of the game. Then his body changed. A growth spurt pushed him taller and taller. Soon he was far too big to play point guard. He was pushed into the front court, into the world of centers and power forwards. But here's the beautiful part. Even though his body changed, his mind never did. He never lost that point guard way of thinking. He still saw the floor like a playmaker. He still wanted to set up his teammates. That is the gift Magic Johnson gave him. Duncan became a rare kind of big man, one who could pass and create like a guard. He served as an incredible high-to-low facilitator. Nowhere was this clearer than in the 2014 season, when the Spurs played some of the most beautiful, pass-heavy basketball the league had ever seen. The ball moved. Teammates got open. And at the heart of it was a big man who still thought like the point guard he once dreamed of being. And here's the part that makes it special. Magic Johnson himself noticed. Magic has said that Duncan became one of his own favorite players. Why? Because Duncan's game was always about winning and lifting up his team, not about boosting his own numbers. The respect flowed both ways. The childhood idol grew to admire the student, and the lesson at the center of it all was simple. True greatness means making your teammates better. That was Duncan's very first lesson in basketball leadership, and he carried it for life. It is worth pausing on just how rare that connection is. A young boy grows up idolizing one of the greatest players ever. Then he grows up, builds his own legendary career, and that same idol turns around and names him as a favorite in return. Magic was a 5-time champion and a 3-time most valuable player. He was the very picture of winning basketball. And the thing he admired in Duncan was the same thing Duncan had quietly learned from watching him as a child. The circle was complete. The student had honored the teacher in the best way possible by living the lesson. The second name takes us to defense, and to a man Duncan respected as much as anyone who ever lived. That man is Bill Russell. Duncan has called Russell one of his favorite players and one of his favorite human beings of all time. That is high praise. It is not just about basketball, it is about character. On the court, the link between Russell and Duncan is clear. Both men anchored historic defenses, but they did not do it by jumping out of the gym or chasing flashy blocks. They did it with their minds. They did it with positioning. They read the game before it happened. Russell changed the way rim protection worked. He did not need wild, gambling blocks to dominate. He used smarts and timing. And Duncan mirrored that exact same approach all through his career. The numbers back this up in a powerful way. During Duncan's prime, from 1998 to 2009, the average defensive rating across the league sat around 105.1. The Spurs, meanwhile, held a historic mark of 99.2. That is nearly 6 full points better than the rest of the league. That kind of gap does not happen by accident. It happens when a defense is built on discipline, intelligence, and a leader who controls everything quietly from the inside. There was also a shared way of carrying themselves. Both Russell and Duncan had an unshakable calm. They did not trash talk. They did not need to. They preferred quiet execution. They let their defense do the shouting. And the message Russell passed down to Duncan was clear. Championships are built on defense and emotional discipline. Stay calm, stay smart, lock down your end of the floor, and the winning will follow. This became the heart of Duncan's own defensive identity. And remember the kind of resume Russell built with that exact approach. He was an 11-time champion and a 5-time most valuable player. No one in the history of the sport won more. Yet, he did it all without ever putting on a show. He won with his mind, his timing, and his control. That is the model Duncan chose to follow. Not the flashiest, not the loudest. The one who simply won more than anyone, by mastering the parts of the game that do not show up on a highlight reel. The third favorite jumps all the way to the present day. It is Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets. Out of all the active players in the game right now, Jokic is the one Duncan has gone out of his way to praise. Duncan called him a lot of fun to watch, and he pointed directly to 2 things he loves about Jokic's game: his creative footwork and his passing. This pick says a lot about Duncan. The modern game is full of perimeter shooting and high-flying isolation plays. So much of today's basketball happens far from the basket. But Jokic is different. Jokic plays a thinking man's game in the post. He represents the modern version of the cerebral point center, a big man who controls everything with his brain instead of just his body. If that sounds familiar, it should. It is almost a mirror of Duncan himself. Like Duncan, Jokic leans on low post fundamentals. Like Duncan, he uses high to low passing to pick defenses apart. Like Duncan, he sets screens and controls the tempo of the whole game. They share a way of playing that puts intelligence above athleticism. And once again, the respect flows both ways. Jokic has said that he models his own offensive approach after Duncan. He even hopes to build a long-term dynasty-style impact in Denver, much like the one Duncan built in San Antonio. So this pick is more than just one legend liking a current star. It is proof of something Duncan deeply believes. Basketball intelligence never goes out of style. The game may change its fashions, but smart, skilled post play always finds a way to win. It also shows that Duncan watches the modern game with an open mind. He is not a man stuck in the past, grumbling that things were better in his day. He sees Jokic, a 3-time most valuable player and a champion in his own right, and he celebrates him. He sees the footwork, the vision, the creativity, and he recognizes a kindred spirit. The postgame he loves is still alive, just wearing a new jersey. And that gives Duncan a quiet joy, because it means the things he valued most are not gone. They are simply being carried forward by a new generation. Now we move to the player who shaped Duncan's career more directly than anyone else. That player is David Robinson. When Duncan arrived in San Antonio back in 1997, he did not walk into an empty team. He walked into a team that already had a giant. Robinson was already an established superstar. He was a former league MVP. He was the face of the franchise. In most stories, this is where the trouble starts. A young star arrives and the old star feels threatened. Egos clash. The team splits. But that is not what happened in San Antonio. Robinson did the opposite of what most stars would do. Instead of resisting the talented rookie, he welcomed him. He willingly stepped back from the offensive spotlight. He made room. And together, the two of them formed one of the most famous duos in league history, the Twin Towers. That single act of sacrifice set the tone for everything that came after. It created the baseline for the Spurs team-first culture. It showed everyone in the building what mattered most. Not personal stats, not personal fame. Just winning together, and win they did. Together, Duncan and Robinson captured championships in 1999 and again in 2003. The first title in 1999 came during a shortened lockout season with David Robinson and Avery Johnson by Duncan's side, and they took down the New York Knicks. Duncan was named Finals MVP. The second title in 2003 was even more meaningful for Robinson. It came against the New Jersey Nets with a young Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili now part of the group. It was Duncan's second MVP and second Finals MVP, and it was Robinson's final season, a perfect way for the veteran to ride off into retirement. What Robinson taught Duncan goes beyond basketball. He proved that true leadership is not about protecting your status. It is about building something that lasts. The smooth handover of power from Robinson to Duncan showed that real strength comes from stability and from putting the team above your own ego. True leaders do not cling to the throne. They raise up the person who comes next. Robinson created a successor instead of fearing one, and that lesson became part of the Spurs' DNA forever. It is hard to put into words how unusual this was. Robinson was not some role player making space for a star. He was a former most valuable player at the very top of the league. He had every reason to guard his place fiercely. Instead, he chose humility. He chose the team. He took a young rookie under his wing and helped turn him into the next great Spur. That choice did not weaken Robinson. It made him a champion twice over, and it made the entire franchise stronger for decades. Duncan watched all of this happen up close. He learned that the truest sign of greatness is the willingness to share it. As Robinson stepped into retirement, a new core took shape. Duncan now stood alongside two players who would help him build the next wave of greatness: Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili. Together, the three of them became known as the Big Three, and the bond they built was incredible. They won 4 championships together. They played an astonishing 1,214 regular season games side by side. That kind of long-term partnership almost never happens in modern sports. Let us look at Tony Parker first. Parker brought something Duncan did not have: blazing speed and elite paint penetration. He could slice into the defense in a blink, and that speed paired perfectly with Duncan's size and skill. Together, they formed one of the most lethal pick-and-roll partnerships the game has ever seen. Parker would dart toward the basket and force the defense to collapse. Duncan would be there, steady and sure, ready to finish or make the right pass. This is the lesson Parker represents. Greatness is amplified through partnership. Duncan was already brilliant on his own, but paired with the right partner, he became even more dangerous. Parker did not just play next to Duncan. He made Duncan better, and Duncan made him better in return. Their chemistry lasted for years and carried the Spurs through title after title. It was proof that two great players who fit together can become far more than the sum of their parts. Then there's Manu Ginobili, and his story might be the most selfless of them all. Ginobili was bursting with talent. He brought unpredictable creativity. He brought fearlessness. He brought a kind of wild energy that defenses could never quite figure out. On top of that, he played with real defensive intensity. By talent alone, he could have demanded a starting spot on almost any team in the league, but Ginobili made a choice that says everything about the Spurs culture. He accepted a bench role. He became a sixth man. He did this to keep the team's rotations balanced and to give the group the best chance to win. Think about that. A player good enough to start choosing to come off the bench simply because it helped the team. That is an enormous sacrifice of personal recognition and pride, and that is exactly why Duncan admired him so much. Ginobili put team success above personal awards. He gave up the spotlight that he had earned, all for the good of the group. This willingness to sacrifice is the very thing that defined the Spurs for over a decade. It is why both Ginobili and Parker stand among Duncan's favorite partners. They lived the same values Duncan held dearest: win first, ego last. When you look at what the three of them built together, the bond becomes even more impressive. 4 championships, more than 1,200 regular season games side by side. That is not luck, that is loyalty. That is 3 players choosing each other, year after year, instead of chasing bigger roles somewhere else. Parker could have demanded the ball more. Ginobili could have demanded a starting spot. Both of them chose the team instead. And that is the exact spirit that runs through every name on Duncan's list. He did not just admire talent, he admired people who used their talent to win together. The next favorite represents the final chapter of the Spurs dynasty. His name is Kawhi Leonard. Leonard and Duncan played together for 5 years, and in that time, they formed a deeply disciplined defensive front court. They locked teams down. They made scoring against the Spurs feel like running into a brick wall, night after night. The peak of this partnership came in the 2014 finals. That year, Leonard's efficient scoring and lockdown defense earned him the Finals MVP award as the Spurs defeated the Miami Heat. It was a stunning moment, a young, quiet player rising to the very top stage and shining bright. And the way he did it felt deeply familiar. Leonard's quiet, business-like approach to the game mirrored Duncan's own entry into the league. Remember how Duncan arrived? Calm, humble, focused, no noise, just work. Leonard was the same. He let his play speak. He did not chase attention. He simply did his job at an elite level. In Leonard, Duncan saw the next generation of Spurs values come to life. He saw a new star finding success by adopting the same fundamental ideals that had built the franchise. This is why Kawhi mattered so much to Duncan. It was not about replacement. It was about continuity. Duncan did not see Leonard as the man taking his place. He saw him as proof that the values would live on. The torch could be passed without the flame ever going out. That is a beautiful thing for any leader to witness. Now, before we bring all 7 players together, we need to talk about a hidden weapon Duncan carried his entire career. It was not his shooting. It was not his footwork. It was his mind. More exactly, it was his incredible emotional control. And the stories about it are legendary. Take Shaquille O'Neal, one of the most physically dominant and intimidating players ever. Shaq described Duncan with one powerful word: unbreakable. Shaq admitted that his usual intimidating tactics and trash talk had absolutely no effect on Duncan. He said he could easily get in the faces of other elite centers and rattle them. But not Duncan. Duncan would just look at him with a bored expression, then quietly go out and outplay him. Imagine being so calm that the scariest force in the league cannot get a single reaction out of you. Then there's the story of Eton Thomas. In one game, Duncan blocked his shot. But instead of celebrating or talking trash, Duncan did something strange. He offered Thomas real, helpful advice. He told him how to get deeper into his body on the next play to avoid the block. Thomas listened. He followed the advice, and on the next attempt, he scored. And what did Duncan do? He complimented him before calmly continuing down the floor. He helped his opponent score, just to prove he could not be ruffled. Steven Adams learned this lesson too. During his rookie season, Adams tried to play physically against Duncan. He wanted to bang and battle and get under the veteran's skin, but Duncan disarmed him completely with friendly conversation. He chatted with him. He was pleasant, and then he calmly dropped 20 points on him. The kindness was not weakness, it was a trap. It pulled Adams out of his aggression, and then Duncan went to work. Even Draymond Green, known for his fiery talk, got the same treatment. As a rookie, Green tried to trash talk Duncan. He got nothing back, just a silent, blank stare. That stare was so unsettling that Green decided never to speak to Duncan again. No insult could match the power of that calm, quiet response. There is something almost funny about all of these stories when you line them up. The biggest, loudest, most aggressive players in the league all tried the same thing. They tried to rattle Duncan, they tried to get under his skin and pull him into a battle of emotions, and every single time it failed. Shaq tried force, Adams tried physical play, Green tried words, none of it worked. Duncan simply would not give them the reaction they wanted, and without that reaction, they had nothing. They were left swinging at air while he calmly went back to work and beat them. Put all of these stories together, and you see the pattern. Duncan weaponized politeness. He turned good manners and emotional control into a competitive advantage. While others screamed and fought and tried to intimidate, Duncan stayed silent and calm. and that calm let him dominate early rivals like Latrell Sprewell, Stephon Marbury, and Allen Iverson. It proved that emotional discipline was the ultimate competitive weapon. The greatest strength of all is self-control, and it connects to every single player on his favorites list because every one of them shared that same steady, team-first mind. There is one more moment we have to talk about, because it captures Duncan's place in history perfectly. It happened on December 31st, 2002. On that night, Michael Jordan's Washington Wizards faced the San Antonio Spurs, led by the Twin Towers of Duncan and David Robinson. Two eras were standing on the same floor. Jordan's team ended up winning the game by a narrow 2 points, but the final score is not the part people remember most. The part people remember is what Tim Duncan did. His performance that night was simply staggering. He recorded 35 points, he grabbed 13 rebounds, he dished out 5 assists, and he swatted away 5 blocks. He did all of that across 44 minutes of action. It was a complete, total domination of the game in every single area. But this game meant more than just a great stat line. It carried deep symbolic weight. Michael Jordan was the defining icon of the 1990s, the greatest of his era. And there, sharing the floor with him, was the player who would go on to build the most durable dynasty of the era that followed. It felt like a passing of the torch. The old king and the new builder, side by side for one night. Duncan stood as the bridge between two generations of basketball greatness, and his huge performance proved he belonged in that conversation. Beside him that night stood David Robinson, with the Twin Towers anchoring the Spurs against the man who had ruled the previous decade. Picture the meaning in that scene. One era was ending, another was just beginning, and the values that would carry the new era forward were already on full display. Duncan did not win the game, but he won something larger. He showed the basketball world that the future was in steady, disciplined, complete hands. So now we have met all 7 players. Magic Johnson, Bill Russell, Nikola Jokic, David Robinson, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Kawhi Leonard. At first glance, they seem very different. They come from different eras. They played different positions. Some are guards, some are giants, some are old legends. Some are modern stars. So what could they possibly all have in common? The answer is everything that matters most to Tim Duncan. Look at the shared traits, and the picture becomes crystal clear. Every one of these players showed unselfishness. Every one of them brought a deep commitment to defense or to lifting up the team. Every one of them played with high basketball intelligence. Every one of them carried emotional discipline. Every one of them put the team first. Every one of them was willing to sacrifice, and every one of them was focused on winning above all else. Now look at who is missing. There are no pure high-volume scorers who only care about their own points. There are no flashy personalities who chase the spotlight. There are no players known mainly for fame instead of substance. That absence is not an accident. It is the whole point. Duncan did not pick players based on popularity. He did not pick them based on scoring totals or athletic highlights or media attention. He picked them based on character and on the way they made their teams better. This is the big reveal. Duncan's list is not really just a list of favorites. It is a blueprint for greatness. It is a guide to everything he believes creates winning basketball. Each name is a value brought to life. Magic is unselfish vision. Russell is defensive discipline. Jokic is timeless intelligence. Robinson is veteran sacrifice. Parker is powerful partnership. Ginobili is putting team over ego. Leonard is quiet, lasting excellence. Together, they form a complete picture of what Duncan thinks basketball at its highest level should look like. And these values are not just nice ideas. They have real meaning for how teams are built. Duncan's choices point to a few powerful truths about the game. The first is that force multipliers matter more than high scorers. Notice that the players he chose all make their teammates better. They do it through elite passing, through hard screens, or through absolute defensive anchoring. Duncan believes the highest tier of basketball is reserved for players who lift everyone around them, not just players who fill up their own stat sheet. The second truth is that defense is the true championship anchor. By picking defensive stalwarts like Bill Russell, David Robinson, and Kawhi Leonard, Duncan reinforces a deep belief long-term winning is built on the defensive end. A team can have a cold night shooting the ball, offense comes and goes. But a disciplined, high IQ defense stays consistent night after night. It is the steady foundation that wins over the long haul. The third truth is about positional fluidity and cerebral execution. By including Magic Johnson and Nikola Jokic, Duncan shows his love for players who break the old rules of position. These are big or unusual players who can pass and create like guards. It suggests that the future of basketball does not belong to rigid, old-fashioned positions. It belongs to smart, skilled players who combine size with the ability to distribute the ball and pick apart any defense. Duncan saw that future clearly because he lived it himself. The beautiful thing is that these principles did not retire when Duncan did. They are still alive in San Antonio today. Since Duncan stepped away from the game, the Spurs have stayed true to the same ideas that built the dynasty. They still value player development. They still value quiet discipline. They still value long-term planning over quick fixes. The culture that Duncan helped create did not fade. It simply kept moving forward. And it has led them to their next great hope, Victor Wembanyama. The selection of Wembanyama is the perfect example of the Spurs' philosophy in action. He is a player with rare size, smooth coordination, and incredible defensive instincts. He represents the next step in the evolution of the front court, a giant who can do things big men were never supposed to do. In many ways, he is the natural continuation of the path that Duncan walked. Think about the line that connects them all. David Robinson taught Duncan. Duncan and Popovich built a culture, and now that culture is shaping Wembanyama. The foundational principles set down by Duncan, Robinson, and Popovich remain the ultimate guide for chasing championships. The names change, the faces change, but the values stay the same. Discipline, defense, intelligence, sacrifice, team first, always. That is what makes Tim Duncan's list so special. It is so much more than 7 names. When most players name their favorites, they are simply telling you who they enjoy watching. But when Duncan named his 7, he was telling you something far bigger. He was telling you exactly what he believes makes a champion. His favorite players were never simply his favorites. They were living examples of the values he believed create winning basketball. They were proof of his entire philosophy, gathered into one quiet, powerful list. Magic, Russell, Jokic, Robinson, Parker, Ginobili, and Leonard. 7 players who each carried a piece of the same truth. And that truth is the heart of everything Duncan stood for. Greatness is not about being the loudest. It is not about scoring the most. It is not about chasing fame or attention. It is about discipline, intelligence, sacrifice, and a deep belief in something bigger than yourself. It is about making everyone around you better. It is about staying calm when the moment is hottest. It is about winning together the right way. In the end, his list serves as a blueprint for excellence. It is a quiet lesson from one of the smartest minds the game has ever known. Tim Duncan understood greatness on a deeper level than most players ever will. He saw past the highlights and the headlines, all the way down to what really wins. And in 7 simple names, he showed the whole world exactly what he saw.